for their launch of Girl Guide cookie season.
Right.
And they set up outside the various and sundry dispensaries, and one kid sold 33 cases. Now, how the hell do you sell 33 cases of cookies?
This is the AT Banter Podcast, a balanced and entertaining look at assistive technology, accessibility, and its importance in people's lives. Join Rob Minot, Ryan Fleury, and Steve Barclay as they banter with people around the world about anything and everything regarding assistive technology and the disability community. Now, on with the show.
Hey, and welcome to another episode of AT Banter.
This is the Christmas show, right?
Nope.
No.
Oh.
Yeah, sorry. No tequila.
Yet.
No tequila for this. Oh, wait, can I get a banter? Like, what's going on?
Banter.
What? Sorry. I just saw an email.
Steve's checking his email.
He saw a Pokemon on the floor.
Squirrel.
Pokey.
Oh, yeah, Pokemon. Oh, yeah.
My name is Rob Minot. And
No, it's not.
And yes, it is.
Nope.
Clearly it is.
Nope. You're in a different spot today.
No, he's in the same spot.
Oh, is he?
Well, roughly
Well,
the same spot.
No, because generally when I'm alone on the futon,
I'm Rob Minot.
I stretch out onto the whole futon. I'm a little annoyed that I have to sit up for this
You got to
episode.
share your seat.
Oh.
But
Would you like me to leave?
no, it's okay. It's fine. The sacrifices we all have to make in order to make. Joining me today, Mr. Ryan Fleury,
Good morning.
Steve Barclay,
There's no such thing as a good morning.
and returning after a little bit of a hiatus, Mr. Rick Chant from Chaos Technical Services.
Give me coffee.
And the jungles of Africa.
Yeah,
right.
that's
And the
right.
jungles of Africa.
The wilds. Returning from the wilds.
Yep.
How long
What?
were you in Africa for?
22 days the whole trip.
Wow.
Nice.
23 days the whole trip. Highly recommended.
Yeah.
Loved it.
Did you get attacked by monkeys?
No, but I saw it, and that's not quite true. I've got a picture of a monkey sitting on a car stealing somebody's windshield wipers. Little bastards.
That's funny.
What are they going to do with windshield wipers?
Smack other monkeys
I
with
guess,
it.
I guess it,
Exactly right.
I guess it can come in handy for a tool of some sort.
Probably.
Pick through garbage with them.
Yeah.
Fend off lions.
No.
Make banana kebabs.
It's like fondue. Banana fondue.
With the windshield wiper. Okay.
All right. Well, we've already digressed wildly off topic.
We had a topic?
Yeah. Well, hey,
I was
Ryan.
close. I had fruit.
Yes, you did.
Oh, nice. I see what you did there. All right. Well, let's talk about what we're doing today, Ryan.
All right. Today, our topic is going to be Apple. Apple products, repairs, the whole gambit.
Yeah, we often get. Well, I shouldn't say often. I should say we occasionally get emails from people who are Apple consumers. They're in the Apple ecosystem. That generally want us to talk a little bit about Apple and what's going on with them. So we thought we would.
Generally, don't they want us to do that in a positive way? Though?
Well, listen.
We're going to try.
I
No,
looked at the headlines, and this really seriously looks like it's lining up to be a crap on Apple episode.
It really isn't. It looks like that, but it's not, because it's a concern for the
Consumers.
Apple consumers.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, we're
know,
just trying to
Bring to light.
bring it forward.
That's right. And honestly, this is all going on with Apple, but it's not like Google. It's not like Microsoft. Samsung.
Yeah,
it's not like any of those are above doing this as well.
Right. Yeah.
It's actually an important consumer issue for everybody, because if Apple gets away with it,
Oh, yeah, I think once one dominoes fall,
yeah,
Well,
sure.
the rest of them are going to follow suit, right?
Well, and I think Apple is a little bit different, though, because Apple actually has the retail stores. And in one of our news articles, that's one of the issues when it comes to repairs. Google doesn't have storefronts. Microsoft has some, but, Apple's kind of in a category of their own.
Why don't we back
Yeah.
up and
Well-
reframe this, because we're sort of
Yeah,
we're vague booking right now.
Yeah, and we're already chomping at the bit to talk about a lot of this stuff because it's a passion, and we're just tickling the audience with a feather right now because we're.
With a windshield wiper.
Tickle, tickle.
But hey, you know what? I do have a little piece of news that I want to talk about, so let's do some news. Now, this is a local story, so anyone that is not in Canada, just skip ahead to our Apple talk. But the BC government has shifted accessible parking requirements to local governments.
I think starting December 10th.
That's right.
Yeah.
As of December 10th, the province will remove the requirement for accessible parking at residential and commercial buildings from the 2018 building code and shift the responsibility to municipalities.
Now that's scary. Removing it from the building code.
Yeah.
This is a big deal.
Absolutely.
This is a really big deal.
Yeah. We could be losing disabled parking spots.
Yeah, this is a step backwards.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it boggles my mind, especially, 3 weeks ago we were talking with Rick Hansen,
Yep.
all about how, the steps that we've sort of taken forward with accessibility. And this comes out of nowhere. I was gobsmacked when Ryan sent this to me. I couldn't believe it. And, a lot of the people who are obviously against these changes are saying that this is not only is this going to muddy the it's going to water down the requirements. It's going to make it extremely confusing. You're going to drive over a city limit and you're going to have a completely different set of regulations if you're going from Burnaby to Coquitlam or, Vancouver to Richmond.
Well, the other side, from another perspective altogether, is if you've got somebody who is not disabled and they park in a disabled spot and they get a ticket, if it's provincial, they don't get their license renewed until all their infractions are paid for.
That's a really good
But
point.
that ticket will be invalid now as of the 10th.
Well, yeah, no.
Right.
But what I'm saying is, the ones that are out there now that have had tickets for parking in disabled parking spots,
They're going to have to pay that to the city.
they have to pay, they have to pay it to the province yet, but yeah, ultimately what's going to happen are the municipalities are going to be responsible for it, and we know what collecting fines for parking tickets and stuff like that, the municipalities are great at stuff like that, aren't they?
No.
I didn't read that in this article. Did it say something specifically about enforcement? Because if you're parked in a disabled stall, you are, and you get an infraction. It's still provincial, so far as I know.
But they're getting rid of those regulations on the 10th.
Yeah, once the 10th rolls around.
No, they're getting rid of the requirement in the building code.
Oh, I see. To include disabled parking spots.
Exactly, in residential and commercial developments. That doesn't change anything about enforcement of existing spots.
Oh, okay.
To my knowledge.
Okay, well,
Yeah,
maybe I'm incorrect. But
Yeah, I'm just scanning the article right now, and you're right. It doesn't
Yeah, I
say
don't
anything
think
about enforcement, but that could be just they haven't even actually considered that yet. But
So I wonder if the municipalities already have some sort of, clause stating that you have to have disabled parking, or is it just right now a free for all that doesn't exist?
I think that's going to depend on the municipality, and if you look at a municipality like Vancouver and how they stack up next to the provincial building codes, in a lot of cases they exceed them. They've got specific requirements that are specific to Vancouver that say, okay, you've got to do this and this over and above what's listed in the BC building code.
Right.
So one municipality might choose to, either continue
adopt the current building
way it is.
code on top of what they've already got.
right, or they might even improve on it, whereas another might say, yeah, we don't really need it, and,
Right.
not do it. And I expect this would probably break down a lot around urban-rural lines as well. Urban centers would probably have more, and rural places would probably have less. Just viewing it as saying, oh, well, we don't have as much of a requirement for it as they do in a big city like Vancouver. So, long and the short of it is, it's going to be really inconsistent
Yeah.
at the end of the day.
Well, and what surprises me is the fact that they did this at all. It seems to me like we had a system
Yeah.
that was working just
this
fine
came out
for
of the blue.
years,
Yeah.
and all of a sudden they went, well, you know what? No, let's make it the municipality's responsibility rather than having it in one spot that is a catch-all for everybody. They've completely made it more of just a bureaucratic mess this way.
Well, and maybe on December 10th, we'll get more information. We'll get more news. Because like I said, this came out of left field. And, I've seen nothing about this. And maybe, the Rick Hansen Foundations and other groups have been aware of this change coming. But,
I don't know.
Well, it's obviously been on a back burner somewhere for some time. They don't
Yeah, they
walk
don't
into
just
an
sign a
office
piece of
one
paper
morning and
and-
say, okay, we're going to change this.
Right.
Yeah, presumably it had to be driven by somebody.
Right.
So, somebody somewhere along the way decided
Yeah.
they wanted to oppose the way it was currently and managed to convince the provincial government.
Right.
But
But I can't see anybody.
It's a strange decision. It's a really strange.
It is, and I can't
It's
see
backwards.
I can't see anybody looking at this and going, "Well, this is better than what we've had. This is going to be more efficient. This is going to make more sense." It just doesn't.
No.
Yeah, strikes me it's probably developer driven. They want those extra 2 parking spots
Yeah.
because they can sell those extra 2 parking spots. Long and the short of it.
So what I'm curious about is going forward. What is that process going to be like? So a new building is going up. They have absolutely no. They are not required at all to
By
include- by code to include
Correct.
spots.
Unless the municipality says they do.
But I mean, imagine once the property is developed and built, then does the municipality step in and they're like, okay,
No, because
well,
the
now-
municipality is the one that signs on the
They say to the developer, "Okay,
permits.
yes, you can build."
I see.
right. So they can, if the requirements for the permits are not met, then they won't sign off on the permit.
So a municipality could literally just say, yeah, don't worry about it.
They could.
They could. Yep.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
But they could also say if you don't have 4 handicap spots, next to your entrance, we won't sign off on your occupancy.
Right.
So it can go either way, but I think we all know which way it's likely to go in a lot of places.
Right.
And
He who has the deepest pockets makes the decision.
Sure,
Yeah.
but I mean, the article is exactly right. What it's going to build into it is just an inconsistency. You're going to be a wheelchair user, and you're going to have a radically different experience if you go to Coquitlam than if you go to Vancouver.
That's correct. Yep.
Well, imagine
and
if you're trying-
that's so frustrating.
Imagine if you're trying to find a place to live, and there's very little vacancy in most of the lower
Right.
mainland.
Right.
You're going to be limited to where you can live based on parking stalls if you're in a chair.
Ugh, ridiculous.
Yep. Definitely not an improvement.
No.
Way to go, NDP. You and your ride sharing too.
Oh, well, do we want to talk?
No,
I don't have
no. Let's get back to the program.
Are you sure? Because that's this is an important issue for people definitely.
Taxi mafia.
Taxi mafia.
It's obviously they're bringing in 500 more cab licenses. They're still not going to get you after 2 a.m. from downtown to Port Coquitlam. They
Yeah.
refuse to take people out there. It makes no sense to me.
Yep.
It just makes no sense. There's no transit and you can't get a cab. Just don't get me started on.
I'm so glad I just stay at home.
Well, I mean,
It's just ludicrous. Like
Yeah,
we're
I agree.
in North America, a major center like Vancouver still doesn't have ride sharing.
Okay, well, so does anybody have the gist of what the announcement was that they announced last week?
yes. The long and the short of it is the ride-sharing drivers need to have special insurance and a Class 4 driver's permit
Same as a taxi.
to be able to tote people around in their car.
Right, which is a huge deal. Like getting a Class 4 license. Assuming
And every 5 years, the driver has to have a physical
But I also think
at additional cost.
they said that the Uber drivers have to be like the cab drivers. So let's say you're a Surrey taxi driver. You can drop somebody off in Vancouver, but you can't pick up in Vancouver.
Well, I didn't get that out of the...
No, I think I saw that too, which is ludicrous. Ludicrous.
But I mean, these requirements essentially, it's going to make drivers just very rare.
Well,
like no one's going to want
Uber's already said no. This ain't going to work for us. We need to talk this out.
Yeah.
It's
Like,
it's
yeah,
not
I
a
mean,
business
it's-
model for them.
So what they put is put it unrealistic standards in order to make the ride sharing companies go, yeah, well that doesn't
They
really
want
work.
Well, that's
ride-sharing
exactly
to be
what
a
they've
taxi
done.
company is
Okay.
what they do.
Okay.
That's exactly what they've done.
So it's a it's a sneaky way of saying no.
Well, and they
They know the demand is high, so they know they can't say no, we're not going to
Outright.
just have it. They just have to make the
Requirements so high.
ridiculous.
Yeah.
Sure. That's crazy. Oh,
I don't know how many
I
people
don't
come
know.
to this city saying, you guys don't have Uber
Oh, I know.
or Lyft.
Oh, I know. Yeah, I hear it all the time.
Yeah,
It's
yeah. World class
bonkers.
city. It is.
It's bonkers.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there you go. That's Vancouver people, and it's raining.
And it's raining.
Pouring.
No,
We're in
no,
the middle
no.
of a winter storm.
It's not
right now.
raining.
And we've
It's
got cab.
pissing out there.
Yeah, and we've got cab drivers who are refusing service to people with guide dogs. We've
Yep.
got cab drivers who are refusing to transport people from one part of the city to another part of the city because it's too far.
Yep.
Whoa.
They
Hang
can
on.
make more money
hang
on short trips.
We had a party at Discovery in Stanley Park, and we called 7 taxis, and none of them came. Oh, we don't like going into the park at night.
Steve and I went to a jam one night.
Military base in the park, and the military can't get a cab to come in
Yep.
and
Yep.
take them out to a SkyTrain station so they don't have to walk the park?
Yeah. Yeah, you hear stories all the time. All you gotta do is just Google it. There's people waiting 4 hours in the rain for a cab. Steve and I went to a jam one night, and I don't know, would we wait 2-3 hours for a cab? Went
Yeah.
back to your place, and Steve made me like a 2 a.m. pizza. Like, I almost stayed the night.
Yeah, it was ridiculous.
Ludicrous.
Absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah. So I'm just fed up with
Yeah.
the taxi.
Plus, when you call them, it's like, "Oh, we were there." No, you fucking weren't. We
Yeah.
were standing outside.
Yeah,
We were
yeah.
literally standing outside waiting the entire time. You were not there.
Yeah.
One of your taxi drivers is lying.
And I'd like to know which one.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
So if any of you out there want to become my new driver, let me know.
Oh man,
50 take home a year, I'll do it for you.
man, maybe you're right. This doesn't bode well for the Apple news. Now we're on bad news. This is all bad news.
We're already surly. Jeez.
These are all terrible news
We
stories.
should have a. we should have a
it's
feel-good
10
news
o'clock
article.
on a Monday morning. I mean, Christ, you guys, what do you expect?
I'm going to find a feel-good news article so we can talk about something non-hostile for 5 minutes.
Yeah, maybe we better.
Well, okay, let's
Before
get
we-
back to it's National Cake Day.
Oh, all right. National Cake Day.
That's right.
What?
Squirrel.
Squirrel. What's your favorite cake?
Pineapple upside down.
Cheese? What? Is that not a cake? That's a cake,
It
right?
is, yeah.
Yeah, so cheesecake.
There's a little place in Ladysmith, right on the main drag, that sells the best cheesecake.
Really?
The best I've ever had.
Huh.
And it's not heavy. She whips it before she puts it into the shell.
Yeah, that's
oh
the key.
my
Yeah, that's the
God. It's to die for.
I'm going to have to try that.
No, it's so good.
Hey, Steve, why don't you tell the fine folks about Canadian Assistive Technology?
Well, Canadian Assistive Technology is a Canadian-based distributor of, guess what? Assistive technology.
I would not have guessed that.
Really? Oh, I got to work something better into the name then. And we do all kinds of low vision and blindness aids, as well as all kinds of physical access aids and accessible furniture. You name it. Visit our website at www.canastech.com.
Rick, let me ask you about this. Chaos Technical Services.
Chaos Technical Services.
Don't sound so excited about it. Woo! Speaking of repairs,
We are the sister company to Canas Tech. We do the repairs on low vision devices, reading machines, for libraries, braille printers, and pretty well anything in between. We can be found at www.chaostechnicalservices.com.
all right, shall we begin
We
our
can
Apple
try.
discussion?
Yeah, let's try.
Well, what do we, should we?
Should we
I feel like we should preface this somehow because again, we have audience members that are big fans of Apple that are in the ecosystem.
Apple's done a lot.
I can preface it for you.
Okay, go.
On the way home from Africa, we stopped in Hong Kong for 6 days. While we were out wandering around in Hong Kong, regularly down towards the Central Pier, a pedway walked across in front of the Apple store in downtown on Hong Kong Island. Mm-hmm. And I was dumbstruck, and I mean dumbstruck, by the amount of people in there every time we walked across that pedway.
Yep.
I mean, hundreds. 2 floors. And all you could see were wall-to-wall people.
Well, hey, listen. I mean, you go to Metrotown here in Vancouver, and
There's
you know,
always people in
go
the
by the
Apple
Apple
stores
store, and
yeah.
it's always packed.
Yeah, Coquitlam Center, same thing.
Packed.
Yep.
Yep, sure,
Packed.
sure.
So
You know, Apple is
they've got their grip on consumers. There's no question.
right.
Well, we've talked about before, you know, there is a cult of Apple. Like there are people
Absolutely.
who are just Apple fanatics.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But now Apple is tightening the thumb screws on the third-party app developers.
Well, they've
Yes.
They,
Okay,
they
well,
haven't
there's-
just
yeah, there's a
tightened the
couple
thumb
things
screws
going
on them. There are no third-party app developers for Apple. You can't get an app onto an Apple product unless it's through their app store.
Right. That's what I mean. That's what I mean. Sorry, I
Okay,
guess
so-
I misspoke.
So, okay, why don't we start? Well, let's start there then. Let's start talking about the class action lawsuit that's in front of the Supreme Court at the moment. And as of today, actually, the Supreme Court is actually hearing this. This is a I guess a hearing to see whether or not a lawsuit could go forward.
Class
This isn't the
action-
actual.
class
This
action
isn't
lawsuit.
actually the lawsuit. The case in point is that the way that the Apple Store works is that when an app developer builds an app and puts it on the App Store, Apple takes a 30% commission off the price of that app.
Right. So if your app is selling for $1.29, what's 30% of that? That Apple's
buck.
taken. A buck. There you
Oh no, 30 cents.
Why would
More
you start
math.
at $1.29? Like,
Yeah, thanks
why
for
not
making
give us
me
a
do like
shot
really
here,
hard
buddy?
math. Yeah, really.
go. Well, because that's what their apps are. Well, okay, they're 99 cents.
$1.66. What's 30% of?
They're not 99 cents so much anymore. So prices went up.
So
Okay,
let's
so
just leave it at
a buck 30 app, the developer gets $1 and Apple gets 30 cents.
Right.
No, a buck Apple gets 30 cents.
Okay.
fine. Okay,
36 is
a third. They get a third.
30.9 cents.
Almost a third of see. And now Apple's argument is, well, that's not us. We're not charging the consumer that. We're charging the developer that. Now, if the developer has to recoup costs and make their app more expensive to the end user because of that 30%, they know they're going to get 30% off the top. They might make their app $4 instead of $1, so that.
And Apple's probably fine with that because that means
Well,
they
they-
now get
yeah,
That's
Apple
exactly
doesn't
right. All of a sudden,
Yeah.
their 30 cents goes to $1.20.
Yeah.
Right.
Right. Part of the issue around this, and this all gets really into deep legality that none of us have the brain power to really sort through. But the gist of it that I get is that there are specific specifications around brick and mortar retailers that have been around since the 70s, and that there's a difference between the Apple platform and a regular brick and mortar distribution retail outlet. Traditional brick and mortar, the way that it would work is that you would buy a product from a manufacturer, you'd bring it into your store, and then you would sell that. You're acting as a distributor of a product.
Is that how I'm supposed to be doing it?
That's right.
Dealer, yes.
Now, Apple's argument is that they don't necessarily operate like that. People are buying the app from the developer, not from Apple. Like Apple is just saying, hey, look, our platform is just a go-between between the consumer and the developer.
Yeah. Right.
We're not.
We're the broker.
Exactly. And so, we're not charging the consumer this. So they're trying to get around this idea of antitrust this way. And what the Supreme Court is sort of looking at is whether or not they agree with Apple or if they agree with the filers of this suit, you can proceed in this antitrust suit. Part of the problem is that these platforms, they're trying to use this old legislation that was really built around physical brick and mortar establishments. The idea of these tech platforms.
Somebody going into a store and physically buying something
Yes.
and walking out with it in their hand.
I think what you're going to find is that the legislation behind those really needs to catch up.
Well, I think the implications for Apple might be a little different than other groups like this. Because, for example, Google, if you go on the Android platform, you can get third-party apps from other sources.
Yep.
Now, you probably have to go into your phone and tell your phone to accept them, because by default, your phone's
Always has had to.
your phone security is going to say, no, you don't want to do that. It
Saltillo
could
makes
be
an
anything.
app that is not a Google app,
Yeah.
and you have to go in and say, allow apps from third-party manufacturers.
Right.
You have no choice,
Yeah.
or it won't run.
Yeah, but with Apple, there's no way of doing that.
Right,
You
correct.
have to go through the App Store.
Correct.
So they do have really a hard lockdown of their market. There is no other way that,
Right.
that you're able to sell an app to Apple.
And
that's maybe jailbreak your phone or device
yeah,
or something, right?
sure.
And,
Which
and therein lies, I
Yeah.
think, the fundamental question of this is,
That's right.
Are they a monopoly?
Right.
And what does that mean in terms of antitrust?
That's right. Yeah. So again, this is an important suit because what gets decided could really spell the future for what the Apple Store is going forward, and whether or not they're going to be able to lock down that platform like they have been, or maybe they might have to do something like Google is doing.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see the court come down on this. I think this is a really interesting test case, because if this goes forward, then there's all the parameters around what their ruling actually says, and if they're going to have to be pretty specific in their ruling, I think, and they generally are, because once you have this, if this goes through, then you have people starting to look at, okay, well, does Google have too much of a control over it?
Absolutely. And there can't be any ambiguity
Yeah, and then
on what the ruling is.
yeah, and then you start looking at stores like Amazon that charges retailers I think about a 15% cut on sales.
Mm-hmm.
This is part of a new paradigm that is still working its way through the courts to determine how best to do business.
But with old laws,
Yeah,
right? So as they go, they're going to have to be updating that too.
exactly.
So I can't see this being a short-term, ruling. This is how it's going to be going forward.
Well, I think
there's
it's
going to be a whole lot of stuff going on in the background about this.
I think they said in the article that this case, if it goes to court, wouldn't happen until June of next year anyway.
That's right.
We'll have to wait and see.
This sort of plays into the other stuff that we're going to be talking about today about Apple and just how locked down Apple products are.
Yep. Right to fix it.
This is right. This is exactly the same thing. They want, and what I'll throw out to the room is that can you see Apple's point in doing this? So, for example, like not allowing third-party apps to run on your device, having one source for all apps. Every app that goes through onto the Apple Store, they get to look at, they get to make sure that it's going to run well, it's going to make sure that there's no viruses. Maybe that's not such a bad thing.
It's not a bad model, and they've, I think, probably managed to avoid a lot of the pitfalls that have happened to platforms like Windows, say, for example, where it is kind of the Wild West.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I read an article just over the weekend where Google, they had to remove, I think, 14 apps from the Google Store because it came out, it was all from the same developer.
Right.
All came out that it was all malware.
Yeah.
The actual app didn't even work. The user would try to open it and it would just crash immediately because all it was doing, it was just serving malware to their phones.
Huh.
So, perfect example of what could happen with an open platform like Google Play.
Yeah, and you see, I think that's where Apple is going to come at some of this argument from, is that 30% that we're charging the developer, that is a service-based charge because we are indeed making sure that it's going to run on the various Apple platforms, and we are indeed hosting, the site that you put your app up on so people can download it, and we are indeed standing behind the fact that you've downloaded the app. Oh, it's not working, we'll refund your money. So I think that's going to also weigh into all the deliberations that the U.S. Supreme Court is going to have to weigh out.
Right. I mean, from a technical point of view, that kind of doesn't, I have to say, it doesn't sound
I like
all
it
that
from
far-fetched.
I like it from a technical point of view.
That sounds right. I mean, that way that every single app that's getting installed on your products
Has been vetted.
is going to work, has been vetted. It's not going to create any compatibility issues.
Yep.
I think that at its core, it's not a bad idea.
Right.
Yeah, from a consumer perspective, it's entirely a positive.
Right.
Except for the fact maybe that it might bump up the cost of your app a bit, but at least there's.
But it's that value-added service.
Yeah, that's right. There's at least some security in that. So it's interesting your Google example. I did read that article a while back, and those apps made it onto their store before they were discovered.
That's right.
That wouldn't happen with Apple.
That's right. Exactly. So there are two sides to this.
Absolutely.
But at the same time, how much control should the company have over its products once they've sold it to consumers?
Well, that's where
we're going to get into,
story.
right? So, and really the next topic that we want to talk about, it's going to be a long conversation, I think. And it's really all pretty much similar, which is, I don't know, who wants to frame it?
You could even run the CBC video if you want it, because I don't think it was that long, if I recall. But
this is from the National.
How are you? I have an appointment at 2:30.
So we've got hidden camera footage here.
Our team came to a Toronto Apple store with a MacBook computer that had a common problem. The screen had stopped working.
It's like very dim when I try to turn it on.
Okay, so what I'll do is I'll jump out the back and have a look on the inside.
Sure.
Time passes.
Alright, thank you for your patience. So there's a lot of liquid that's gotten on the inside. So I took a little picture. The little red dots here, they're normally white, and it means that they've come in contact with liquid. So for it to be basically all over the whole computer, it means that something's gone through the whole thing. So with that, we'd need to be looking at replacing quite a few components.
Are you sure could it be something else as well?
Well, regardless of what the cause of it is, if it isn't the liquid, we have to fix the liquid. So it's not we can't do partial repairs when it's been damaged by something.
So what are my options now?
What I was going to say is basically all the components that we need to replace is going to cost more than $1,000. So
to fix it entirely will cost more than $1,000?
Yeah. So at the very least we'd need to replace is the logic board and the top case. So that we're looking at $600 plus $500, so $1,100 with a labor of $100. And then if we need to replace the display as well, that's another $780.
Oh, jeez.
$1,900 later.
The display we may not need to replace, but we're still looking at a total of around $1,200 there.
Wow. So just to be clear, there's no cheaper alternative for this?
I mean, that cost is very close to the cost of buying a new computer. In terms of fixing it in the store, no.
So this is a MacBook Pro that the Apple Store said would cost $1,200 to fix and wasn't worth it.
All right, let's take a look and see if that's true. See, you can see the Apple logo.
Talk into the microphone there,
Now
Rob.
watch, if I take a light and I put it through there, you'll actually be able to see everything on the screen. So this is my microscope light.
On the back. Yep.
And when I put it right through here, you can see that there's a cursor there and that it's moving. So most of the screen is working properly. It's just that the backlight is not working.
Correct.
This could be either due to a bad screen, a bad motherboard, bad cable. We'll figure that out once we open it up.
Okay, so this guy's disassembling this MacBook. Now,
All right,
strictly
so let's
speaking,
take a
is that
look on the
legal?
inside of this.
According to Apple, no.
Yeah.
Now, this is where the screen is going to connect to the computer.
So we're watching a
So the
crime
first thing I'd
taking
want to
place
do is
here.
examine that area of it to see what it looks like. See the pin that's sticking out?
Okay.
So that pin is actually most likely the pin for the backlight. And as you can see, it's probably not making contact because it's bent outwards. And I got my set of tweezers over here, and I'm just going to try to push that back into the slot and try to get it back into its groove so that when I re-plug in the connector, it'll work.
At the Apple Store, they suggested this was water damage.
Well, you can see that there are water indicators that have turned red, so that's why they got that idea, and they're by the battery. So this is a water indicator, and these turn red when they see liquid.
Moisture,
However, the thing
not
here
liquid.
is that these not only turn red when they see liquid, they also turn red anytime there's humidity. So if you have this in a very
Moisture.
humid room, all of these sensors will turn even if you've never spilled liquid on the machine.
Great.
So let's plug this back in
Huh.
and
Didn't know that.
hope for the best. All right, as you can see, we've got an Apple and we have a light.
So it fixed.
Yeah, now,
That took you like 1.5 minutes?
maybe.
So if I walked in off the street with this problem, what would you charge for the repair you just did?
If somebody wanted me to just bend the pin back, I wouldn't charge them for that. I would say, I'm going to rework your original cable. That may not last long term, but here, it's free. If they wanted us to replace the cable, depending on the model, anywhere from $75 to $150, depending on the difficulty of opening that model. But something like this, we wouldn't charge for it. And 99% of the time, just bending the pin back, it'll allow it to last until the end of the life of the computer.
We asked Apple to respond to this incident.
It's going to cost more than $1,000.
To fix it entirely will cost more than $1,000?
Yeah.
And to the widespread allegations of similar corporate behavior.
Being affected by the liquid.
They declined to provide a spokesman, but issued a statement claiming their customers are best served by Apple's certified experts using genuine parts. They denied systematically overestimating repair costs.
How often do people show up here with the Apple Store telling them it can't be fixed or it's too expensive to fix?
Somewhere between 10 and 30 times a day.
Jeez. No kidding.
Yeah.
At that one location.
Yep.
All right, so props to CBC News and the National for that investigation, and that's really staggering. I mean, we've seen it with other types of equipment, you know, and you know, Rick and I, we come from a different brand of electronics repair people because we actually learned component level repair when we were electronics tech. Now, everything's board swaps,
Board replacement.
You know, none of the manufacturers want to go to component level repair.
Nope.
You know, it's just
We live in a disposable society now.
well,
Okay.
exactly.
So let's step back and frame this a little better for people. So right now, Apple is facing a little bit of backlash regarding their repair policies. I mean, they don't allow third-party repair
Service outlets.
Yeah, there are no third-party Apple service centers.
Not authorized ones.
Right.
There's the twist to the tail.
Yeah.
Now,
There are third-party authorized service centers.
these third-party guys, they don't have access to parts. They don't even have access to blueprints or schematics.
Well, that's
I mean, they could probably find them, but I'm just saying that Apple will not provide parts or schematics to any sort of third party, that they just have none of it. Everything has to go through Apple. So they've locked down the repair
side
abilities,
of it. Right.
which wouldn't be an issue if it was also coming out that a lot of times when you take a computer that you're having, or an iPhone or whatever that you're having a problem with, back to Apple, they are overestimating the repair, or just out and out telling you, you know what, that you would just be better off buying a new device.
I think the latest generation of the Apple products, the MacBooks and stuff, they actually have a system chip. So if you throw in a third-party hard drive, your device is now dead in the water.
Yep.
It doesn't recognize. It has to be an Apple certified piece of hardware. So who owns that piece? Who owns that product? I've spent $1,800, let's say, on a MacBook.
Apple owns it, but you're the user.
But do I not have a right to put in my own hard drive?
Well, apparently not.
Yeah, according to Apple, I don't, unless it's an Apple certified piece of hardware.
So again, this comes back to, I think,
monopoly.
Possible good intentions. I mean, I can
Absolutely.
I can understand
to a
this
certain
from
degree.
I can understand Apple's stance on this to a degree, where it's like, you know what, we don't want just anybody fixing the devices. Apple has always prided themselves and their devices on being rock solid. You know, you bought an Apple product, it was, you
stable,
know,
it's just
it was
going to work.
stable,
I'm
it just
sorry,
worked.
I have a problem with that statement.
They tried.
If you're
That's-
going to provide rock solid equipment, you need to provide rock solid service in the background.
No, I agree.
That's not rock solid service.
Well, no, it's not rock solid service where it's at right now. But what I'm saying is that looking at this, you know, sort of from a distance, I can see some of their of this point. It's like, you know what, we only want people who are authorized. We only want, you know, we don't want anybody just cracking open the devices and
Sure.
you know, making a half-assed repair and then releasing it back out into the wild, so that we have, you know, because it hurts the brand. It hurts, you know, if people buy something, an Apple product that's used and it doesn't work properly, or just, you know what I mean? So I guess they've wanted to differentiate themselves with everybody else. I think that's at the core what the initial idea was, which isn't necessarily bad. The problem is what it looks like is happening is that they're really trying to drive the idea of this disposable economy, where it's like, we want, you know, or it's like, what was the term back when car manufacturers were first
Planned
obsolescence.
right, where they would just build in like a life
End of life.
Expectancy.
an end of life for
Yep.
their products, so they knew that somebody would have to buy a new one after a certain amount of time. Apple's, you know, just going full hog on that and being like, you know what, we only want somebody to be able to use their MacBook for like 3 years, and then we don't want them to get it repaired. We want them to buy a new one.
We've seen
no,
that in AT too.
Well, hold on. They don't actually say that. As a matter of fact, if you ask them, and they have been asked this many times, if they are doing this, they say no. They're not planning obsolescence, and yet we find out, you know, that their operating system is deliberately slowing down older phones, for example.
Right.
And,
Yes.
and they say, oh, well, that's to preserve battery.
Right.
Well, okay, sure, let's go with that, because a battery in virtually any device could be replaced. But with their product, it doesn't matter if you get the battery replaced. One, they won't do it. And two, they don't want an unauthorized service center to do it. But three, even if you replace that battery, the phone's still slow because their operating system has deliberately slowed it down.
Right.
You know, it doesn't come back and say, oh, look, you got a new battery, and boom,
Let's
kick the speed back up again. So yes, they are doing this, and it's
pretty thinly veiled.
Yeah.
As well,
Yeah.
but it is happening.
Yeah.
Now these two videos, you know, we'll include links to them in the show notes, and you know, I encourage anybody to go and watch them, because it takes you through the two different sides of this particular MacBook repair. You know, it sort of illustrates, you know, some shenanigans going on in terms of repairs for Apple products, at least at that particular Apple store. I mean, maybe.
Well, if that's the case, Apple needs to be all over that, because.
Well, who knows? Yeah.
You know,
I have a hard time believing that's just one person
store.
in
I don't
one
think
store.
so.
Yeah, I think that's
I don't
probably
think
policy
so. And
across the board.
The other thing that bothers me about that clip is, one says, "Oh, you've spilled liquid in here," and when in actual fact, as Louis was saying, in the high humidity environments, those moisture dots will turn color.
Right.
They don't tell you that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So
and where do we have high humidity environments in Canada? Well, like Toronto, Montreal,
right,
anywhere next to a river,
right.
You know,
especially in the summer months.
Yeah.
But it doesn't. I mean, honestly, like if you had spilled liquid all over your device to make all those dots go red, like you'd see a lot more than just red dots.
Well,
you would see water damage in there. You would see scorch marks.
Rick, how many times have you opened a device and seen liquid in there?
A few,
know, yeah.
one or two,
and it's and I'm sure it's no problem to you're not going, oh, the red dot indicators have gone off. You open it up and be like, oh my god,
there's snot in this thing.
Like you can tell when somebody has spilled water over.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
As opposed to these things just going off because of humidity. Yeah. So. There's some obvious...
Oh, there's fur growing around this transformer. I wonder how long it's been damp.
So now the question is, and there's a little bit of backlash building about this. There's a right to repair movement that is going forward of, trying to pressure Apple to be more open with parts and with schematics and with the ability of third party service centers to operate. Now, I guess the question is, and from a consumer point of view, when you buy a device like this, it should be your right, should it not, to be able to repair that device in any way that you see fit. It's your MacBook. Once Apple's not seeing it that way. Apple is sort of maintaining that, that MacBook is still theirs, even though you've bought it. You do not have the right to open that thing and to repair it or to modify it or anything else.
And I'm okay with that up until the warranty expires.
There's the twist to the tail.
Yeah.
Right? If I was looking at a PRC device or a Saltillo device or any of the other devices that have an operating system, up until the warranty expires, it goes to an authorized service center, and it is fixed appropriately. It is returned so that it's operating like it's supposed to be operating, and you can't crack the case. It's that simple.
Well, I thought I read somewhere that Apple actually uses proprietary screws.
You can. There's no such thing as a proprietary screw. You can get into them. You can get into them.
Okay.
Yeah. The other part of it is Apple is framing this as a reliability issue and saying, oh, well, we're more reliable because we're factory authorized. Well, that's not necessarily true. Yes, there can be flaky fly-by-night places, but Apple is just as capable of doing a hash repair themselves.
Not if they're replacing complete components.
Well, but Apple products have no greater reliability.
Oh, no.
Any other
because they're
on the market.
using components that they're just putting their hand in a bin and pulling them out and tagging them down to a board.
They're no better quality. I've looked into this before. I wrote an article about it a few years back about the Apple reliability myth. They are not more reliable than other computers. No. But on the flip side of this, when I had an iPhone, I had a problem with mine. I can't remember exactly what it was. But I went into an Apple store and they went, oh, and they handed me another iPhone.
Wow.
They didn't ask me about when I bought that iPhone. They didn't grill me or anything. They just took my iPhone, handed me another one, and said, there you go.
And I had the same.
I was so impressed.
Known issue.
But how long ago was that?
Oh, this was, how long have I been Android? It's at least 6 to 8 years ago. I guess.
See, and I'm just wondering
even more recently, I just want to throw this in. I had an Apple TV 3rd generation that just locked up on me, froze. I wouldn't work anymore. And this was like a year and a half ago. And I took it to the Apple store in Coquitlam. And again, he plugged it into his system. He couldn't bring it back to life. He gave me another one. No questions asked.
Okay.
If it was under warranty, anything, I walked out with a new Apple TV.
Yeah. So you wonder about some of the. I mean, obviously, this is a particular case that's been documented, but is this really the rule or is this the exception? And because in my experience, Apple Repair has generally been pretty good, but this is a terrible example.
And maybe again, it depends on the device. Maybe a dollar value associated with it. It's just not worth,
well, that's
cracking it open up.
That's what I was thinking. But I mean, with Steve's iPhone was it a known issue with the model? Oh, okay. Well, just replace it if any come in.
Well, but also, I mean, that's great if your device is under warranty. If the warranty is still valid.
They never asked me.
No.
They could probably see that, though, do they not? Because whenever you buy an Apple product, you got to register. They know exactly when that warranty.
Soon as they plug it in.
Yeah,
as soon as they plug it in.
And that's the key. Like, how long is the Apple warranty on if you buy a MacBook? Does anybody know?
I'm not sure off the top of my head.
Couldn't tell you. I'm not an Apple user.
Maybe it's 2-3 years. Once you're outside that warranty,
I think it's 1 year unless you buy Apple Care.
Right, and there was an example of somebody who had bought an iPhone, and there were dollar values associated with repairs of a cracked screen. Or no, it was the watch, the Apple Watch. Examples of cost repairs of an Apple Watch screen versus just replacing the screen. And if you had Apple Care, and if you didn't have Apple Care, if you have Apple Care, it'll replace the screen twice. But after that, then you're paying, I think it was like $2.99 to get the screen replaced when you can buy a new one for $3.99 or whatever it was.
Right.
So is Apple Care worth it in the long run?
Sure.
For some people, yes.
I mean, I guess this is what you have to. I mean, because obviously they probably have a great warranty system, right? Where they won't hesitate to replace something as long as it's under warranty, yada yada. But what about all the people out there who've had their MacBooks for 2-3 years, and it stops working, and they need a repair that's an out of warranty repair? This is where this all becomes an issue.
Yeah.
So there is a website called iFixit that.
Well, they kind of open devices up and look at how easy or accessible they are for repair.
Right.
Yeah.
So they are a big component in this right to repair movement, and they're being very vocal about the discrepancy between how easy it is for a repair to take place as opposed to Apple saying, oh, you know what, you need to just replace the device. I think it's pretty clear that Apple's preference in terms of repair is to get somebody to just buy a new device,
which isn't in everybody's budget.
Not only that, I think that there's also an ecological component to this. We can't live in a disposable economy anymore. The landfills are getting filled with enough shit. We don't need to be adding, broken MacBooks that could be repaired, but, aren't. And I know that Apple's side of it will be like, well, you know what? We encourage, we will recycle any sort of Apple product.
And they will.
Yada, yada, yada. But still, it's, we can't just, this brings it back to AT and it's, and the great accessibility that Apple brings to their products, and the people that use it. They're not cheap. They're not cheap products. People who are on limited incomes that buy a MacBook Pro, that's a huge buy for them. They can afford to be rebuying their iPhone or their MacBook every few years because there's no viable repair solution for them. This is why I think it's important for us to be talking about this. We didn't want to have the show where we're just crapping on Apple for an hour. These are important consumer issues, and it's important for everybody, including us, because again, if Apple gets away with this, Microsoft, Google,
who follow suit,
Samsung, they're not that far behind.
Yeah.
The thing I found most disturbing about that story was the red dots. The fact that the guy was saying, "Oh, because you've got those red dots, we've got to replace everything."
Mm-hmm. Right.
And that really there was no replacement required.
That's a corporate policy.
Yeah.
You can be guaranteed that's coming from corporate.
Yeah.
The locator, the moisture dots are tripped.
Yeah.
You can't trust that board.
Yeah. So if those dots get tripped by humidity,
yep,
you're replacing perfectly good components.
That's right. Yeah. And if they're not perfectly good components, then Apple hasn't done a very good job building that unit to be able to stand up to basic humidity. So it's, it puts the end user in a really untenable position when they go to an Apple store if they live in a humid environment, because that means that pretty much every time they go into that store, they need to replace a motherboard.
Yep.
Well, and as an average computer user, how would you know?
Either that or get them to open it when you buy it and throw some silica gel in it.
Yeah, there you go. Compare this to any other product that's out on the market right now. Like, let's compare it to a car. If this happened when you took your car into a garage, people would freak out. Absolutely freak out. But it's Apple. For some reason,
people are okay with it.
People are okay with it. People will defend their right to do this, and it's maddening. It's just silly because they're hosing people is what it boils down to.
Well, and it makes you wonder how long this has really been going on. This issue could have been around for 10 years, and really now it's just starting to get, some pushback and some media coverage that this is going on.
Well, and I think it comes part and parcel with Apple pushing back against the small repair guys. Not allowing them to get parts, making sure that their parts are so specific that, you can't use a third-party replacement. Let's face it, a hard drive is a hard drive, and it used to be that Apple used to just have, Seagate hard drives in them, I think.
But not now. They have kill switches built in.
So, yeah, but now they've got a special hard drive with a kill switch so that you can't actually put in a different drive.
Unless it's an Apple drive.
Yeah. Craziness.
Yeah. So, I could spend $60 on a hard drive, or I could spend whatever Apple's charging me for an Apple drive, and I guarantee you it's going to be more expensive.
Considerably more.
Yeah, and it's not going to be any better
exactly.
quality. Well,
3 times the difference, I would bet.
Potentially it could be better quality than maybe a really cheap replacement, but you could actually go and buy a higher quality drive and put it into an Apple product were it not for that kill switch.
Yeah.
Well, and it's interesting too, because from what I was reading, Apple's not the only company that's doing this, and they sort of gave examples from appliances. A lot of appliances these days, stoves and stuff, they have built-in measures that make it pretty much impossible for a third-party repair person to come in and fix it, because they're either parts that only the manufacturer will sell. Or it's just like completely built-in, locked-down systems that somebody who's third party wouldn't be able to access.
Well, I'm fortunate I haven't run into that yet.
I don't know what's the other flip side of this. Is there a defense for Apple in this?
No.
I think you got to give consumers choice. Well, I guess we have choice. You can not buy from Apple if you want.
Yeah, yeah, that is the choice.
Sure, but I mean, granted. Put yourself in this place of somebody who has some sort of an impairment, and they know that Apple has the best accessibility features of any of the manufacturers. Which, let's be honest, it's true.
Yep.
Head and shoulders, an Apple product is going to be more accessible out of the box than any other device.
Out of the box being the operational phrase there, because if you look at the cost of an Apple product, you can buy a comparable laptop in the PC world and a screen reader for about the same price. So you are paying a premium for that accessibility. Make no mistake.
So it's tough. I mean, it's not necessarily always realistic, I guess, to just say, well, you just shouldn't buy Apple. Just buy a
I think you just need to go in with your eyes open, do your homework. If it's the right device for you, then by all means buy Apple. But any product you're buying, do some research, find out what repair costs might be. Whether it's a Lenovo PC, HP, Mac, whatever. Just do a bit of research and find out where repair costs might be down the road.
I guess what I want to avoid in this is we certainly don't mean to demonize Apple. Because it's not like any other major, technology manufacturer is going to would behave any differently, or has behaved any differently. It's just, I think the importance of these stories coming out and for there to be a little bit of pushback against these is that some of this stuff is anti-consumer. I think at the end of the day.
Well, I was going to say, let's go back to Steve's car analogy. Let's say you buy a Subaru Forester. You don't have to always take it back to Subaru for service.
No, you don't.
You've got choices.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the important part, I think, is to have those options open to the consumer. Now, whether or not this right to repair movement is going to gain any traction, or whether or not Apple is going to take a second look at some of this stuff because they are starting to get a little bit of bad press over it, I guess time will tell.
Well, I think you made a really good point earlier. This right to repair thing has to gain some traction. because otherwise our purely consumer-driven society is going to sink our planet. So,
yeah, I mean, we can't live in a disposable economy. It's just not it. We have to recycle. We have to, and I mean, honestly, if you buy a MacBook, you should be able to use that thing until you can't
get parts anymore.
Yeah.
And in the U.S., that's 5 years. Right? And manufacturers are supposed to be able to support their products for 5 years.
After warranty.
After warranty?
I believe so, yeah.
Okay.
You know, we could talk for hours about this for sure. And, there's an add-on to this story, too, that just came out recently, which is Amazon... Right? Amazon now
has just terminated all their third-party Apple resellers for refurbished Apple devices.
Right. So,
right. They did a deal with Apple to be able to sell Apple-branded stuff, but the price to do so was to turf all these other guys who were selling used Apple stuff.
Right.
Wait, no. Back up.
Basically, Amazon has been negotiating with Apple for some time to be able to sell Apple products on the Amazon platform. They want to be able to sell Apple. Apple has resisted to this point, but they finally struck an agreement. Amazon will be able to sell new Apple products, but they won't be allowed to sell any used Apple products. So they had to turf all of their guys who are on the Amazon platform selling used Apple, or refurbished Apple, or recycled or recovered.
Okay.
Now, yeah. So I don't know what are the far-reaching implications of that? Like how many people were actually selling refurbished devices on Amazon? Do you think?
I have no idea.
I would say I don't know, but I would guess a lot.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at it worldwide, there's probably a ton of them. But
Amazon's a big company.
Yeah.
And that's a big platform to all of a sudden get the rug yanked out from under you. So if you're somebody who wants to buy a refurbished Apple product to save a few bucks,
good luck.
Where are you going to get it?
Yeah.
You have to go to Apple. And is Apple going to sell it, or are they?
No, they're not going to sell refurbished.
No, of course not. There's not a chance. So this essentially takes the whole refurbished Apple product market out of play.
Well, I think on Apple's website, I think they do have reconditioned. I think you can buy reconditioned.
Which sounds like a fancy word for refurbished.
Right. No, I don't know if it's only specific models or specific years, but I believe I've seen that somewhere.
And you got to know that if it's from Apple, it's going to be a premium price for what you're getting. A refurbished Apple product from the Apple Store is going to sell for a lot different price point than a refurbished Apple product from Amazon.
So
guaranteed.
I guess the next question is, what's going to happen to eBay? Are they next?
I don't think so, because eBay is more of a an open marketplace.
But so is Amazon. They've got third-party sellers.
Yeah, but eBay is more user to user, right? That's a little different. Like that's just you deciding, hey, I'm going to sell my iPhone.
No, but there's third-party sellers on eBay now. It's not just user to user.
Yeah, there are.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't know. I don't think
so. Maybe the people from Amazon hop over to eBay.
Maybe.
Well, they probably will.
Maybe there'll be more.
But that's probably the last vestige. That's the last.
Yeah.
Craigslist.
Yeah, that's true.
No.
Kijiji.
True.
Yeah.
But it's certainly making it harder for those guys to sell their product.
Yeah.
Tinder, let's have a hookup and I'll sell you an iPhone.
Actually, that's an interesting idea. Like a Tinder-like app, except for products for refurbished electronics.
Swipe left if you want iPhone. Swipe right if you want Mac.
Yeah. So Apple's going through some stuff right now. Their share of the laptop market has dropped by almost 25%. The MacBook Pro Air their release has been delayed.
Yeah, the iPhones aren't selling like they had thought they were going to.
Now, my take on this, all of this is, I don't think that really reflects anything against Apple or the brand or the quality of their product.
No, devices last longer.
Yeah, I think that just,
I don't replace a laptop every year.
I think back
built-in obsolescence.
But I think back to the PC market. There was a time where you would be upgrading your PC every few years. or at least you were upgrading
There's the
components.
key. There's the key is upgrading.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, like, and after a while, the technology got to a point where even a mid-range computer with mid-range parts could pretty much do everything that you wanted to do. You know, you no longer needed to have the most state-of-the-art hardware to do all the stuff that you wanted to do.
Unless you're a gamer.
And even then, even gaming has it's way better now. Like so I think that it's a lot like that. The smartphones have gotten to that point. You don't need the shiniest, brightest iPhone every year or every couple years in order to do everything you need it to do. Your 3-4 year old phone, it just lasts longer in terms of usability. And so I think that this idea that people just need to get new devices every few years is just tapering off. People don't have that feeling.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think this is a fault of Apple. I don't think that the shine is necessarily coming off the products. They're still good products. They're still great. They have great accessibility components to it. All of that is in place. It's just the market's changing. It's not a lock like it used to be for Apple, and I think that some of this stuff is just they're kind of panicking right now.
Well, they're down a long ways from where they once were. They've just dropped to what's the article say? They dropped to 5th in terms of computers shipped last year, which was a pretty decent decline. They lost 10.4% in the third quarter of 2017, and another 7.9% in the third quarter 2018. Yeah, they are sliding, and the reason that people speculate that they're sliding is because their computers just didn't take that step forward that consumers wanted to see. They aren't that much better than anybody else on the market.
And they're pricey. Like, really pricey.
Yeah.
And I think that they're beginning to realize that price point is starting to
bite them.
To hurt them. For the longest time, people were willing to pay more for an Apple product because it was an Apple product, and it was, there was all these perks of buying the most recent generation of any given Apple product. People aren't feeling that way anymore. So Apple is going to need to react to that, and we already have seen that in some degrees. Look at the iPhone 10. They released that, and there was a little bit of blowback from the price point, and they ended up. What's the watered down version of the iPhone 10, right?
The new one, the XR.
Right. That wasn't initially. I don't think that was not in the plan for them. But so they've had to realize that maybe we need some,
mid-range stuff.
Exactly.
Well, I think we're going to reach a point here. I'm hoping at least in the next 2 to 3 years, where Google, Apple. I can't really say Motorola so much because they've got a wide variety of phones, but devices are going to have a price adjustment. There's not many of us who are even, full-time employed can afford a $1,400 phone.
No.
And, honestly, subsidizing on 2-year contracts is okay, but then you're locked in and you can't change. And if you want to change, it costs you more. And, it's frustrating. So I'm hoping that it's going to adjust.
Well, the reality is that the adjustment that's likely to happen on the short term here is that those prices are going to go up because of the trade war that's been started with China.
Right.
All of these products are manufactured over there. If there's a premium that's slapped on them as a tariff, then prices go up.
Yeah.
Plus, the U.S. economy is starting to slow. We're starting to see declines in their stock market, which could mean, the currency gets devalued against the Chinese currency, in which case it goes up further.
Right.
So, we could see some major shifts going in the wrong direction on these things.
Well, and I think that going forward, hopefully what's not going to happen is that Apple is going to have to focus a lot of their energies on how to deal with these changing trends. I don't know, maybe they don't put quite as much energy into accessibility solutions or accessibility innovations that they once did. Now that's a bit of a,
maybe they cut back their research and development costs.
I don't know. I mean, that's a bit of a grim forecast, and I certainly hope I'm wrong about that. Apple, and I want to put some positive spins on Apple, because they have been accessibility innovators for years, and if it wasn't for Apple and what they did, we wouldn't see accessibility across all these other devices either.
Yeah, true.
So they're important, and that's why this stuff is important. It's important for them to be called on some of this stuff, because at the end of the day, the important part is that for end users who need accessibility solutions in these devices, the devices need to be affordable. There needs to be affordable repair options available to them. You can't expect people on limited incomes to be purchasing new MacBooks every few years. And when they have a device like this that has these accessibility solutions that are so important for people on a day-to-day basis, not having that device all of a sudden because a pin bent, and you having to spend $1,200 on a repair at the Apple Store, that's not a viable solution for a lot of people.
No.
So
I think when you talk about their innovation around accessibility, it was innovation in general that made Apple the name it is. It was always being on the cutting edge of new technologies, always being a market leader in terms of different aspects of the market, being the first to market with new and innovative products. They don't seem to be doing that anymore. They don't seem to be able to capture the interest of the market like they once did. And that's either because they're falling down on their own innovation, or other manufacturers are getting better at it. And I think it's actually a bit of both. I think that there's a bit of a crisis of leadership at Apple right now. I don't think they're being driven to really take chances and try and advance the market in new and innovative ways. And I think at the same time, a lot of the other guys are getting wise.
Yeah, that's definitely a possibility. I mean, I guess the flip side of that, though, is that it could very well be that there hasn't really been much innovation in the terms of accessibility, mainly because what else is left to do? A lot of the big major accessibility solutions are already all built in. I mean, they've got newer things like Live Listen, which you're able to use the AirPod wireless earbuds that come with Apple products to get some noise cancellation for people who are hard of hearing. They have the magnifier, they have VoiceOver, they have Braille support built into the device. There's
Switch support, Bluetooth Switch support.
I mean, there's a ton of stuff that they've got built in. Maybe what's left to innovate? That could be the slowdown in innovation as well. But I don't know. It's hard to say. It could very well be that their energies are being fed into other projects.
Their new streaming platform coming out next year.
But I would assume that it's a bit of a scary time for Apple right now. A lot of bad press, a lot of things coming out into the open that I'm sure they would have preferred not to, and just a slowdown in innovation, I think, is all combining to,
and a trade war, and
that doesn't help too.
It's got to be rocky at the top for sure.
So this could be a big opportunity for other manufacturers to really step up and improve what they're doing and improve their innovation and catch up to Apple. And that could be what happens.
Well, and we're seeing that with Microsoft. More and more people I'm seeing on Twitter are making a switch to Narrator because it is now a good screen reader. It can do web browsing. It can do email. It supports Braille displays. It has switch access. Do you really need to buy a Mac? No, unless you want voiceover. You've got Narrator right out of the box.
Yeah, and you can get a comparable powered machine for a lot less money.
Yeah.
And therefore, you can replace it 2-3 years down the road and not feel you're breaking the bank.
Yeah.
Well, and I throw this back at the room again, but you can replace your own hard drive and not have a kill switch built into the hardware.
Yep.
There's advantages to both.
And this is
and disadvantages.
And this may be more and more what consumers look at when they're faced
long
with
term.
What ecosystem do I step into?
Yep.
Well, and I think we're coming to a point now where we're seeing that with the digital assistants. Am I in the Google camp? Am I in the Amazon Echo camp? With your home automation devices, am I going with Philips Hue lights? Or am I going with XYZ lights? I think we're in a different environment now where people are still trying to figure out if an ecosystem is actually where they want to be. The nice thing with the digital assistants is you can pick and choose what third-party devices you want to use with your digital assistant. You're not locked into, I can only buy Google products or I can only buy Amazon products, right? So
at the moment,
right, yeah, and right now that's a Wild West. But maybe maybe that's the way Apple needs to look at things. Is let's start opening things up a little more.
I think it's going to be a very interesting time for Apple because I think they've got some choices to make. Whether or not they just kind of try to bulldoze through this. And, this new deal that they've struck with Amazon lends me to think that they're just going to try to bulldoze their way through this. I don't think that they're necessarily going to be changing their policies anytime soon.
No.
I mean, I could be wrong about that. That's just, my gut feeling. And that bums me out because, I'm all about the consumer. I think that everybody should have their choice. I think that if they want to buy an Apple product and be completely happy and thrilled with their product and have great accessibility, I think that's awesome, But listen, if you're gonna require your customers to be repurchasing product, after a few years or ridiculously overcharge them for repairs, that's a problem, and that's not friendly to the consumer at all. And that's what I see as the biggest thing going forward here. Innovation and all that, it's not important, especially from, an assistive technology point of view. We want devices in people's hands that makes their lives easier. And for a price point that they can afford, that everybody can afford. That's the ideal here. And as it stands right now, Apple is just not looking like that's where they're at.
Yeah. Yeah, that'd be true.
So,
all right.
Smarten up, Apple.
Have we beaten this to death?
We have.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd say we've killed this
I think
one.
it's time to wrap this one up.
Yeah, I do.
in it.
I do. I want to, I don't know. I kind of want to end on a positive note, though. I mean, for somebody who's an Apple fan that's out there that's listening to this is going to be like, oh, here we go again. We're going to get more hate mail.
Well, I will give Apple some credit here because I think it was earlier this year, Apple finally allowed Amazon to install their their Prime Instant Video app on the Apple TV. So I'm not just locked into stuff from Apple or Apple apps. I can install Amazon Instant Video and use my Prime subscription to watch Amazon content.
Yeah, but I wonder why that happened. Could it be the new deal between...
No, this happened, like I said, earlier this year or last year.
Yeah, it's all part and parcel.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard to say, but they loosened that up a little bit.
I don't know. I'm a little bit okay. Yeah, I know you're trying to end on a positive note, and here I am.
Shut up.
Okay,
shut up.
That's a positive note.
There
yes.
we go.
You know what? Apple makes good stuff.
They do. They absolutely do.
They've always been industry innovators.
Well, and people who buy Apple products love their Apple products.
Absolutely.
People who buy Windows products are typically people who are looking for productivity tools. And, with Windows, you kind of know what you're going to get, right? Windows has come a long way in stability and reliability as an operating system. Except 1809, the October update.
All their updates.
Well, on your computer. But, pretty much when you buy an Apple product, you kind of know what you're getting.
Yeah, it's very true. And, and don't worry, we could do a similar episode on Microsoft, and we could talk for 2 hours about all the crap with Microsoft.
Well, I think we will.
No manufacturer is, above reproach at all. So, but it's important. There's a lot of people out there that depend on Apple products, and these issues that are coming to light are important for them. And that's kind of why we wanted to do this show. We're fighting for you.
Well, we're bickering for you.
True.
Kind of. This will have no real effect on your lives.
It's important for people to know.
Yeah, it is.
I mean, if they're going to be making a long-term decision.
Well, I'm putting out $2,000 for a MacBook.
A long-term financial decision.
Yeah.
It's important for them to know that this is what's happening in the background. And, if something happens in 2 years, you might be forking out another $2,000.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. So don't send us hate mail. That's the point. We're very sensitive.
No, Rob's very sensitive. Send us all the mail you want.
You can send us any mail you want. These guys always forget to forward it to me, so I never see it.
I didn't. I just assumed you never read it.
Hate on. Just carry on.
I forwarded Rob an email, and he hasn't even bothered reading it today.
Which one?
Somebody left us a comment on
I saw that.
Okay.
I couldn't. I was on the train. I couldn't.
Okay.
I couldn't approve that comment until I get home.
All right.
Hey, Ryan.
Hey, Rob.
Where can people find us?
They can find us online at atbanter.com.
They can also drop us an email, though, as long as it's not hate mail, to atbanterpodcast@gmail.com.
And we will read your hate mail.
We'll read it, but then we'll cry in the corner.
Shift delete. It's going to the ether.
Hey, did you know you can also find the AT Banter podcast on Facebook and on Twitter and on Instagram?
That's right. And you can find us on pretty much any podcast app under the sun. I don't think we've left any off. There might be a few, but...
What's the email address we use for hate mail?
atbanterpodcast@gmail.com. Wait, no, for hate mail is steve@canada.com is where you send all the hate mail, and then all the positive email you would send to atbanterpodcast@gmail.com.
Send all hate mail to I Kick Puppies.
Poor Charmaine. You got to leave her out of this.
All right, guys, is that going to about do it for us? Anything we missed?
Wrap her up.
No, I think we're good.
All right, big thanks to Rick Chan for joining us today. Woo-hoo. It's good to have you back. Thanks, everybody, for listening, and we will see everybody next week.
This podcast has been brought to you by Canadian Assistive Technology, providing low vision and blindness solutions across Canada. Find us online at www.canastech.com. That's CANASSTECH.com. Or call us toll-free at 1-844-795-8324. For all your assistive technology servicing needs, call Chaos Technical Services at 778-847-6840 or find them online at chaostechnicalservices.com. Music provided by bensound.com.
Whoa, look at that. Master of the one take.